Hello everyone, today I'm going to be modelling a ship for the kind of bad faction in the game we're working on. At this point in time we are still working on a title, so that is why I have not called the game by its name. Yes, so on with the ship. The boat is meant to resemble a sort of steamship with a very traditional looking hull, in the sense that it sort of slopes and then squares off at the back, kind of like what you see on a normal boat. However, as you can kind of see in the corner of the screen, there is a chimney being modelled here. This is going to be one of two chimneys on this boat, which the second one of which I will model later on when I get to the back portion of the boat. But as you can see, most of the work here in Blender is just edit mode, sort of messing around with the geometry, trying to get something which kind of looks steampunky and also interesting. Sort of one of the things which I found out a lot after learning a lot about Blender is that the best way to get a good looking game asset is not to just dump on lots of detail, which I can't say that I don't do because I quite like doing it, but it's to focus on getting a model which looks really interesting to the person who's either playing the game or who's going to be looking at the thing you're making, and getting a level where there's enough detail there for someone to appreciate what you're making. Quick pause on that thought. This little cylinder I've just modelled here is a hard surface stamp for the side of the ship. As you can see, I'm kind of copying it along and then joining it together, and I'll mirror it to the other side and then use a Boolean modifier to create a stamp in inset geometry into the surface of the ship. Just adds more detail, and to me I kind of thought it resembled either some kind of vent or some kind of window, like I don't know what it's called, but you know, those round windows you see on the side of ships. Later I do end up using the Cablerator add-on to add lots of cables, and some of which I attach to these sort of circular features. I don't know, like cable, cable ports in the side of the ship, that kind of thing. While I'm modelling this engine nacelle, I'll tell you about Cablerator. Cablerator, if you do use Blender, is a fantastic add-on. I got it at the Blender Market, and it's amazing simply because it allows you to really quickly create lots of cables, which is fantastic if you're modelling lots of steampunk or just industrial looking models, because you can get lots of cables very quickly. Sorry. Here I'm modelling a little sort of bolted panel which I will spread over the sort of surface of the ship, kind of add it in places on the deck, on the back, sort of all over the place, to sort of add just a little bit more depth and detail to the model, kind of bring it out a little bit more. When I go through the texturing process in another video, it's going to mostly be in a very cartoonish style, you know, similar to all the other models which I have yet to make for the game. However, it's gonna resemble a sort of it's still gonna maintain a grungy industrial look with, and probably I'll use like dirt maps and ambient occlusion and all that shenanigans to get a grungy but almost cartoonish looking texture scheme for this vessel. Not to make it look childish or sort of like that kind of cartoonish, but just to make it more stylized, to stand out in a world where a lot of games are very hyper-realistic. Not to say that hyper-realism isn't a unwanted or not desirable thing for games. I mean, hyperrealism is really good for games, but I think it'd just be me and the guys working on the game believe that it would be good to have a bit of a change up, especially for our game, which is going to follow a very sort of I don't know, we've got our own story. It's quite a detailed story. We kind of want to give off that sort of almost sort of legacy sort of story time vibe, but not story time as in story time for little Timmy at his bedtime, but story time as in it's going to be like a saga. I don't know what that's saying. Maybe we'll have more games. We haven't even started or finished this one, so I can't say. I'm rambling, excuse me, I ramble a lot. But here you can see I've modelled a couple more nacelle looking like pod things to kind of go around, and here you can see the pride and joy, the cablerator add-on going to action. I can start placing tons of cables all over the place with the simple click of a button. I've got tons of cables everywhere, which really just help bring out. I end up also using the cablerator add-on to kind of simulate ropes and things, so I use it to kind of make tensioned ropes between features on this boat later on, which end up looking quite good, kind of like the ropes you'll see on the masts of big ships, that kind of thing. Just replicating the work of the cables on one side to the other side just by mirroring. Not using the mirror modifier, but using the mirror function by clicking Control A or Shift A, Control A, and mirroring in the X-axis. Here, if the recorder didn't record it in the bottom right corner, you might be able to see a cannon being made. Excuse the revision page. That's a bit annoying, but at this time I am about to go through the final exam of GCSE. I know, what to do. But you might be able to catch a couple glimpses of this cannon, which I just modelled. It's very, if you look at cannons that were on battleships in the 1800s, it's got that very same sort of look about them, the sort of like very flat and round, sort of round turret with large bore guns coming out of them. Simply because, mechanically speaking, turrets are quite difficult to make, and especially back in the 1800s, they usually used to have separate steam motors in order to operate the rotational mechanisms both inside and outside of the turret. So kind of to rotate the turret, to kind of pitch the guns, that kind of thing. Complex stuff. Here I thought there could have been more of more nacelle, so I added another nacelle, like a big old engine nacelle, because the theme we're trying to go for in the game is less of just your average steampunk and more of a subgenre, diesel punk. So kind of looking at sort of more less steam powered stuff and more kind of gasoline thrusters, this kind of more almost more technologically advanced, but still kind of janky and weird compared to what we know today and what we have today. Probably because nothing like this would ever work. I mean, physically speaking, I mean, there's not really any lift mechanism on this ship, so there's not really anything stopping it from just plummeting to its demise. But it's still kind of cool to mess around with the idea. And I mean, it's a game. It's not like it's going to be it's not like it's a representation of reality. But we're trying to follow on with the same sort of industrial aesthetic and principles of the other things we're going to have in the game, planning to have, large oil rig-like cities and towns, which are the main locations. That's not really a spoiler, that's just a basic thing in the game. Planning to have other vessels, we're planning to have lots of really cool weapons, some of which I've already modelled, which I will bring together, compile into a video of kind of bits and bobs to talk about. And then we've got lots of the characters we need to put together, and sort of slowly bringing together all the features of this game. One of us, well, I've got my foot in all three of the main parts of the state of the delivery of this game. So for me, the main thing is making assets. I am the asset man. And being the asset man, I hold great power, and with great power comes great responsibility. I don't know what you thought I'd say there, but great power comes great responsibility, and my responsibility is partly shared by one of the guys who is also planning on helping potentially with assets. So there's going to probably end up being some kind of shared asset making going on. At the moment, the plan is that I'm going to take charge and just make pretty much all of the assets, which I don't mind. That's kind of the thing I like doing. However, things which I also want to help out with is the main story writing. So me and Leland have been working on writing the story. The story is going to be very in-depth. I can't take too much credit. The only credit I can take is for coming up with some of the key ideas, and sort of how we both. It's not like I came up with this thing and then he worked on from there. It's a mutual sort of mutual development of the story that we all share in. Which we are working on. Yeah, so kind of working on the story. Story is a big part of the game because we want to have a really in-depth story which players can enjoy. That's quite important to us. Being our first game, we've realised that there's a lot of risk involved in making your first game this really in-depth thing, but we feel as though it's still a learning process. Don't get me wrong. It's not like, oh yeah, well, we've just got into the industry and we're going to be the best that there is. We're going to come out with this awesome game. It's more like, we're going to figure out what we need to figure out as we go along, and we're going to polish it to a point where we think that people can actually enjoy the game, which is important to us. Because we want people to be able to enjoy the game as much as we will sort of enjoy people playing the game, and not really because we'll get to make some money or something, but mainly because we like the idea of people sort of exploring the story of our own creation and kind of understanding the world we make. Which is a kind of a cool thing, I guess. It's kind of a cool thing. I mean, not really, but what the hey. Yeah, I mean, the whole plan behind the game is still in progress. I mean, everything's still in progress, but we've only got a few more things to kind of work on. Here, I'm going to show some final shots of the boat, just kind of some still images. Get some nice views in for the people watching, so you can see the probably finished geometry of the boat, and yeah, that'll be all. Yeah, see you next time.